Peace be upon you, everyone. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. So we're continuing on from the scroll that is Namka's questions. I'm not sure if some of them are missing. Perhaps he may have even broken the WhatsApp with the weightiness of the power of the questions. So let's see if we can find it. Here we go. One more question, if possible. What does it mean when it says in the text that we should view the deity as inseparable from the spiritual guide? Is this a sense of knowing the essence of bliss and emptiness is coming from the Guru, while we may be visualizing Vajrayogini's appearance as self or projected? We follow various visual forms in the Tantric sadhana, for example, where there can also be the visual appearance of the Guru in the form of Vajradharma. So if, for example, Padmasambhava or Christ is being practiced, we remember the spiritual guide is inseparable as the meaning. Is it also part of the practice to overlay the visual forms? The face of the guide we see as the face of Christ, for example. This is so just to be clear, we're now talking from the perspective of Tantric practice, which assumes the milieu of the practitioner has understanding of all the stages of the path, the Lamrim, up to and including Guru Yoga. And now that the Guru Yoga has been imbibed to a certain degree, you now practice the sadhanas to bring it to life. That's the basis in which they speak. Now, we may not have those realizations and understandings yet when we're practicing it, and the sadhana and the practices can help bless us to understand it. And that means when we're not at that level and something comes up in the sadhana and we don't understand it, then we don't worry about the fact we don't understand it. We don't think that we should be able to understand how to do intricate heart surgery when we're still learning the basics of medicine. So the way they're speaking and the context in which they're speaking is answering questions and giving practices to disciples, those who've fallen in love with the Guru and they understand the Guru is the Buddha, and now they're deepening that practice. That's the context in which these things are understood. So if we're not in that space, then don't think you need to do the practices that are at that level. Think, oh, I can't do that. It's like, that's right. It's for when you are in that space. You don't get married to someone that you've just met. And when you've just met someone, you don't take on the commitments of marriage when you first meet them. If someone asked you to do that, that would be crazy. I think that's often what happens when we come along, if you come along to like a spiritual place or a religion, you may even be the first time like visiting a temple, and there's an enthusiastic practitioner who's, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't, and you completely put off. It's like, oh, why do I have to do that? You don't have to do any of that. A lot of the rules and the understandings are for when you're married. When you're married, then you can't sleep with someone else. And many other things like this. It's very important to keep that in context, that understanding. And then we can answer these questions for those people who are married. So the realization is when the mind has changed. We've understood something, we've grokked it fully, like deeply in our being. It's very difficult to change our mind when you've understood what gravity is. It's very difficult. For someone to convince you, if you drop an apple in the air, it'll go up. You've realized it. It'll be very difficult for someone to convince you again that Santa Claus is real. Very difficult. You've realized he's not. You've realized the story behind what it was. This is realization. And the realization is, when you think of your spiritual guide, you think of Buddha. And when you think of Buddha, you think of your spiritual guide. That's the realization. When you think of enlightenment, you think of your spiritual guide. And when you think of your spiritual guide, the sense of what enlightenment is comes into your mind. This understanding that we're practicing with can be very difficult for a lot of even experienced yogis and yoginis. When Atisha went to Tibet, said there was a great practitioner there that he met, and he had 4 different cushions set up for the 4 different practices that he had got from the different lineages. And Atisha said, you Tibetans practice 100 deities and don't achieve one, whereas we practice 1 deity and achieve 100. It's the concept, the feeling that life isn't la ilaha illallah. It's the feeling that there's a distinct spiritual group over here, a distinct spiritual group over there, and they practice different things, and there isn't a oneness connecting them. So it's a deep understanding that there's one enlightened consciousness. So when you're relating to your guru at this level, you're not relating to a human being, like an ordinary human being that you relate to, and you think, if you're a materialist, you think that when you die, that's it. You're entirely a body. We relate very much to bodies. And as you get deeper, you understand when you fall in love with someone, you're not falling in love with their body. You're starting to fall in love with their being, their consciousness. So when you're with the spiritual guide, you're tuning into their consciousness. And you're recognizing that they're identifying with consciousness, and that consciousness is one. So when they're speaking to you, you're just feeling that the enlightened consciousness is speaking to you through the vehicle of that body. And that body is the only way you can tune into that enlightened consciousness. Like a radio. Venerable Geshe said, I'm like a radio. And the teachings come through me. So you feel that you're being guided by an enlightened consciousness. And that enlightened consciousness is appearing to you in the form of a human being. That's how it's first connecting with you. That enlightened consciousness can also appear as Padmasambhava, as Jesus Christ, as the Buddha, as Vajrayogini. It's the same being. They're just different attributes of that being. And when if you visualize the form of Padmasambhava, for example, you don't feel that that's the historical Padmasambhava. You feel that that's your spiritual guide that you've met, who appears in a human body, now appearing to you in the form of Padmasambhava. And when you see your spiritual guide in a human form, you feel Padmasambhava is appearing to you as a human being. You feel that that consciousness is now manifesting in this way to help you. And this is the whole meaning of bodhicitta, is that you'll become awakened into that consciousness that you can then, with your karmic connections, appear in people's dreams and guide them and help them. Now the reality is there is only one consciousness. So the practice is even like when Veronica got healed by Jesus and she said, "You healed me." He says, "No, it was your faith that healed you." Clearly, other people wanting to abuse Jesus, hurt him. He's a liar, a deceiver. He's just an ordinary human being. The eyes to see the consciousness are the eyes of faith, which is the heart of love, which feels and knows that there's a consciousness there that is divine. So everyone is that divine consciousness. So everyone can be an aspect of your spiritual guide. Everyone is part of the oneness. When we're tuning into the spiritual guide, it is that consciousness appearing to you, giving you instructions to wake up from the dream, appearing as different forms to bless your mind into the oneness of all phenomena. There are different, so it might be difficult in the beginning to see a human being as the Buddha, because the human being appears to have so many faults, whereas a Buddha wouldn't. So it's a very profound practice to be able to see the divine in the human form. Until we can do that, we visualize the light body appearing as Jesus Christ, Padmasambhava, Vajrayogini, and we relate to our spiritual guide in that aspect, and that can be easier. And in some practices, we can visualize our spiritual guide in how they appear in their human form, and we connect in to the blessings. But the whole time, we're relating to the consciousness that is the oneness of all phenomena that blesses us, which appears in the human form. The human form helps us fall in love. And the forms are not separate from that oneness. And so this practice is guiding us to see the divine in all things and the form as the expression of that divine. So Guru Yoga is a very profound practice. But that's when Guru Yoga really kicks in, is when you see the guiding consciousness of the One guiding you through a being in your dreamscape. And this this marriage wants to appear. The unbelievable love we feel that we're being guided home. And this is the form that's appearing in my mind of that divine oneness that's guiding me. There's one mystic, and she said that, I think it was her anyway, they said, after their spiritual guide passed away, they didn't open their eyes again. And I said, why don't you open your eyes again? And they said, because the most beautiful thing I could possibly see has disappeared from the world. And I don't want to taint my memory of that utter beauty by looking at anything else. Because I will never see anything as beautiful as my spiritual guide. To see the spiritual guide, we need to say the eyes of love and faith. You're looking at what says in the Book of Love. We understand that Allah, sublime and exalted, blew his spirit into the clay. Yeah, we are of him. And that is what the angels were commanded to bow down to. So if the angels are commanded to bow down to it, then we can prostrate to the spiritual guide, which is our seeing and understanding the Spirit of God that exists in all of us. And we're relating that this being is conscious of it. So I hope that answers the question in some way. But again, please continue to ask questions through your experience on these profound practices. Very, very, very beautiful practice. To see the Spirit of God consciously in another being, and that Spirit consciously guiding you back to the Beloved. Peace be upon you and your family, and forgive me for my errors. And all praises belong to him. All guidance is from him, and to him we return. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Ameen.